welcome to another episode of Ask Shorty, where I answer your scratch and life questions. Danielle says, "Hi Emma, I want to try to scratch in techno and tech house music. Which kind of scratch can I utilise for it?" That's actually a question that I get asked quite a bit. There's more and more people that mix house music that want to kind of throw in some scratching. With house music, it's kind of quite a fast tempo, around about 120 beats per minute. And you can use any scratch is the simple answer. If you're just starting out, the ones that I think would be good to try would be a simple baby scratch and some chirps, and then maybe a transform. So you can play around with those. I may end up doing an example. There's a couple of my videos which are over faster tempos, so I'll link to those just to give you an idea. But the short answer is you can do any scratches. The other really cool one you can use is the Joe Cooley scratch. So I've got a free tutorial on that and I've just updated it in the school. So take your pick, have a look and see how you get on. Ed wants to know, my question is very simple. I saw you use delay effect in one of your videos. I like using it too, or reverb or flanger. What kind of effect do you use? Great question, I get that asked all the time. It's kind of one of the things I like to play with, it's quite fun. So it's actually the delay setting in Serato, and it's built into my mixer, which is the TTM57. And there's a couple of very specific settings that I use and the way that I set it up, even though most people are using the newer Serato DJ software. I'm on Scratch Live, and I'll totally share the settings with you in the link below. Flex wants to know, I have a problem in left-hand scratching, especially on the Crossfader. What can I do to bring my left-hand scratching to a new level? I kind of answered this in a previous video, and the plain and simple answer is just practice. Do exactly the same thing as you started out with when you learnt with your other hand. I think what makes it challenging is you kind of already have an idea of how to do the scratches on one side, so when you move to the other, it can be a little bit frustrating because you know what you want to do and you just can't make your hands do it. So just take it back to kind of complete beginner level, slow everything down, step by step, exactly as you did when you were learning on the other side. Go really slow, take deep breaths and practice, practice, practice. Philip Wilson says, "Hello, do you have any tips for when crossfaders become stiff on mixers? Do you know what causes this? Are there any special fader lubes? Or do you know of any good places in the UK that sell extra parts?" Great question. I'm not sure what mixer or crossfader you're using. Some of the crossfaders you can take apart and clean. There's definitely things you can do. But my first recommendation is to check with your equipment manufacturer just to see what their official guidelines are. With faders like the inner fader or the rain fader, you can definitely take them apart and clean them. I'll put some links into the kind of lubes and cleaning sprays you can use in the comments below. DJ Willie says, "How do you practice speeding up your scratches? I especially struggle with 3 clicks, like the 3-click delayed flare or the 3-click orbit. I can do them slowly, but once I go faster, I lose the accuracy and my wrist and forearm starts burning. Any advice would help a lot." My top tip for increasing speed is, again, might seem a little bit counterintuitive, but that is to slow everything down. So kind of pick a tempo where you can do it comfortably and then slowly start to increase the speed of the record or the beat that you're scratching along to. You can get things called scratch boosters, which are MP3s which gradually increase the tempo. There's one in my store, I'll provide you a link, and that's a really good way to gradually work up your speed without noticing too much. But find that BPM you're comfortable at, gradually increase, and you should be good to go. Jaclay says, "Yo, you're dope, so are you. How long did it take you to learn each scratch, and how do you choose scratch samples?" I'm just trying to think about how long it did take me to learn each scratch. When I first started out, you kind of get started with the baby scratch very quickly and kind of having some fun and making sounds. So not that long at all, really, the same day probably, but mastering it was another level, and I'm still working on a ton of different scratches. But for something like, as an example, the 2-click orbit or the twiddle technique, I definitely spent like a couple of weeks learning that over and over. Same with the crab. So it's going to be different for everybody, but I have no hesitation to say that it takes, a couple of weeks to a month to really learn and dive into one scratch specifically. Another example is the Autobahn scratch. That took me maybe 3 months just because I found it really challenging and I had to break it down really slowly and practice each part a bit at a time. Obviously, it depends how much you practice as well. So there's no kind of one set answer. It just depends on how much time you put into it. But as a rough guideline, I would be spending anywhere from a couple of weeks to a couple of months on a new scratch technique. In terms of choosing scratch samples, I tend to just use the ones that are on scratch records, and then I just kind of go through them and see what kind of inspires me on the day that works with the beat I'm using.